Okay. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Thursday, November 4th meeting of the City of Palo Alto's Public Art Commission. We're going to start our evening with roll call. Commissioner Waltuck.
Present.
Commissioner Miyagi.
Here.
Commissioner Shen.
Present.
And Chair Taylor, present. Thank you, everyone. Okay, next we have our approval of minutes from our last meeting. Can I get a approval of minutes for our Public Art Commission meeting on September 16th, 2021?
Actually, Chair Taylor.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry,
the agenda changes, requests, or deletions, and then oral communications, the items not on the agenda.
Thank you. Sorry, I was moving too fast. Agenda changes, requests, or deletions.
There are none.
Okay, so now we will do approve oral communications. Excuse me, I'm jumping ahead of myself this evening. Thank you for keeping me on track. Do we have any oral communications for items that are not on tonight's agenda?
I see currently 2 people in attendance. Please raise your hand if you'd like to address the commission on any subject not agendized for this meeting tonight. And I see no raised hands at this point.
Wonderful. Okay, so now we can move on to our approval of minutes from September 16th, 2021. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. And can I get a second?
I second.
Wonderful. And now we'll do roll call. Commissioner Waltuck.
Here. Or yes.
Commissioner Viaggi.
Yes.
Commissioner Shen.
Yes.
And Chair Taylor, yes. Wonderful. Now we're ready for staff comments.
Excellent. So we have some exciting things on the horizon. We have the Carberly Artist Studio program, Open Studios, happening November 13th from 1 to 5 p.m. at Carberly. They've been working really hard on it, especially this year. They've missed having the community come see what they're up to and all the great work that they've been creating. They've also put together a project called Art Up, in which a number of the artists have been creating raceographs. And so the first 200 visitors will get a free work of art by one of the artists who created a raceograph. And they will all be exhibited there during Open Studios as well. The second item we have is, which image is Nadia going for? Let's see. Is the Meet the Artist event we had today on California Avenue. Artist Deborah Oshheim was in town and came to meet with members of the community out in front of the cobblery, gather some stories from them, take photographs, and she uses those photographs. She will use those in the final artwork that will go along the public safety building for the temporary mural she's creating there. So there were about 30 people who stopped by, about 22 who posed. And she is going to reach out to some of the business owners who were a little busy during the early afternoon hours earlier tomorrow, and hopefully gather some more stories and some images of them as well. And then the third item we have is very exciting news. The Highway 101 Bike and Pedestrian Bridge is scheduled to open November 20th. And here you can see an image of the decorative railing as it was being installed. The creative seating elements will be installed tomorrow morning. And so we're really excited to see that come along and for that bridge to open to the public. And that's it for staff comments this evening. Oh, I do have one more. I'm sorry. The Junior Museum and Zoo opens next Friday, but you do need to reserve tickets in advance. So go on the Junior Museum and Zoo's website to find out more information on how to do that. Now I'm finished.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to start with our action items. Our first one is adoption of resolution.
Thank you. So this is a change in California law that has taken place requiring boards and commissions to adopt the resolution authorizing the use of teleconferencing for meetings during COVID-19 state of emergency. This is something that we will need to do every 30 days until the new calendar year. So we need to do this now for our November meeting, and should the commission meet in December, we will need to adopt it once again at that time.
Great. Any questions?
I have a question on that. Does that mean that we will always do video conferencing, or just only when in the state of emergency, or how is up to our discretion?
That's a great question. If it is not adopted today, we would need to adjourn the meeting and suspend the meetings of the commission until after the new year and await further directions at that time. So I don't have the answer about what it looks like next year, as far as if in January we want to meet remotely, but in February in person. The council just had their first in-person meeting this week. So we're still trying to figure it out.
Okay, thank you.
Good question, Lisa. Any other, or Commissioner Walczak? Any other questions? Comments, thoughts? Oh, okay. Can I get somebody to approve the resolution authorizing use of teleconferencing for the public art commission
move.
meetings? Great. Can I get a second?
Second,
Wonderful. And roll call. Commissioner Walczak,
Yes.
Commissioner Miyagi,
a resounding yes.
Commissioner Shen,
Yes.
and Chair Taylor, yes. Okay, thank you. Next, the Charleston Arastradero corridor.
Thank you so much. I also wanted to point out that we have project manager Joe Sachs with us here this evening, who can address any specific questions that the commission may have regarding the project. So I'm just going to walk you through a quick timeline of how we got to this point and a quick reminder of what the project looks like. So the Charleston Arastradero corridor is a major thoroughfare throughout South Palo Alto, and it joins a number of really important schools, neighborhoods. It's heavily bike trafficked. It's been really important, and it has taken a number of years to get it implemented. So the good news is that the public art was able to get on board so that the artist could work with the public works team and the community to identify spaces for the public art to be integrated into the project. The downside is that because the public art gets installed at the end, we are also delayed with the overall project. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to read through all the dates, but just a snapshot that this process began in 2016 with an original project cost of $100,000, which did include a 10% contingency, which is $10,000. It's been a long process. The project has shifted a number of times, and the art fabrication's been on hold, as you may have known through other projects. And if any of you are involved in any construction, the cost of materials has escalated significantly in that time. So now the estimated date for the completion of the project is June 2022. The artist contract is scheduled to expire at the end of this month. So we would need approval to amend the contract to add the additional funding, as well as extend the date of the contract to ensure that it would allow for the final delivery and installation of the artwork. Next slide. And just to back up one moment is to think about where Susan Zokola came up with the concept of the artwork, because a lot of the streetscape improvements had to do with water and water retention, and diatoms came to mind, and also because it's a significant biking thoroughfare and the idea of wheels, and all of that sort of came together in the creation of her concept. So I think we have some of the conceptual sketches here. And keep in mind, these are conceptual sketches. The actual artworks are not in this scale, so they are pushed back from the curbs. They've all been addressed and signed off by transportation and public works. But to give you a sense of how these diatoms or wheels would play within the corridor, allowing visibility through the sculptures, but also adding some sort of animation and perceived motion without actually having a kinetic sculpture. And so the additional funds in the amount of $35,000 would be for $25,000 for the additional materials, labor, and shipping required for the project, and it would replace the $10,000 contingency. So that would be there in the case that anything ran slightly over once again. And if there are any questions, again, Joe Sachs, who's the project manager for this project, is here this evening if you have any questions.
I have a question.
Sure.
Why was it put on hold in the first place in 2018? Was that a cost issue or something else? Fabrication?
So I believe there were some changes requested by the community was one of the factors in the delay. There was community feedback that necessitated changes to the final phase of the project. It's being done in 3 phases. And then on top of that, the process of getting permits from Caltrans added a year, just that factor alone. Caltrans changed their procedure to require an encroachment permit, as in addition to other changes in the permitting process that the city had to go through to obtain permits from Caltrans to do the larger project. So that was a major delay factor as well.
Is that just because the tracks intersect the thoroughfare, or is there artwork going near the tracks?
No, not Caltrain, but Caltrans. So the California Transportation Authority.
Okay, sorry.
And so that's relative to the roadways that are under this project scope.
And I want to clarify that the changes from the community that were requested had to do with the overall streetscape project and not with the artwork in particular.
Right, thank you.
And I saw from the mock-ups that it looks like there's structure or artwork in kind of the median and on the sides. Is that going to be the case?
Yeah, there are 5 separate sculptures in 5 separate locations. And a couple of them are in the median, which have the median has yet to be built for that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if there's a median.
And another one is, we did get the footings put in by the general contractor for 3 of the pieces, but the other 2 are in the 3rd phase of the project, which has yet to be begun. So we couldn't, have the footings or certainly not the sculptures put in until that's all complete.
And is the fabricator local or is it far away? I know there's shipping in there, but.
No, the fabricator is actually in Utah and the artist is in Seattle area in Washington State. So they will have to be shipped from there.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question and it has to do more with costs.
Mhm.
I know that construction costs is just, we were looking to replace our fence. And when we first did the estimate, and then when we did the estimate again, it could have knocked me over with how much the prices have gone up, which I understand. So we did have a 10K contingency. Now that's gone up to what, 35K now, that more that we're asking for that. And do we see a foreseeable, I imagine we do, for the other phases, increase in cost of materials for those as well?
So the total original value of the artist contract was $100,000 with a $10,000 contingency included in that 100,000. And so we're asking for a $35,000 increase, which would make the total contract $135,000, and it will retain that $10,000 contingency. So ideally, the project will be completed for $125,000, but that $10,000 contingency is there in case there are further increases in costs.
Well, I think that's a good idea. As we see costs just go up and up and up, and supply chain problems and that sort of stuff. So, all right.
Yeah.
And then again, the other phases, I think we're going to have to think about increasing the contingency for those as well.
Well, so this will be, when we're talking about phases, we're talking about the phases that the overall construction project followed. And so the first two phases of that are complete, and the third phase has just resumed, and it's due to be finished in July of next year, at which time the sculptures can be installed. And so the plan is, if we're able to obtain this increase in the budget, that the artist fabricator will purchase the materials as soon as possible to insulate us from future increase in costs of materials. And then they'll fabricate them in time for installation in July of next year.
All right, thanks for the clarification. I think that's a really good plan to do that. Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, Ben. I had a similar question, so thank you for asking. Anyone else? Okay, well, Joe, I want to say thank you. I know it's been a long road and it will be a long road ahead, but we appreciate this, and it's going to be exciting for the city. It's a long time coming. So, and do you mind, I believe I know the answer, but I'm not 100% sure. Did they repave the roads like a few years back, or is that something they're considering that might affect?
I think repaving is part of this project. I don't know which portions will be paved at what times. That's a question for Public Works, and I don't know the answer to that. They're going to be adding medians and widening the road in some places for bike lanes, and narrowing it in other places, to allow for bike lanes. So there will be some repaving as part of that, but I think it's being done in phases.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions, thoughts, comments? Okay, thank you. So can I get an approval of additional funding in the amount of up to $35,000 for the permanent artwork? Lisa, can you unmute?
Yes.
Okay, can I get a second?
Second.
Wonderful, and let's do our roll call. Commissioner Shen,
Yes.
Commissioner Miyagi,
Yes.
and Commissioner Waltuck,
Yes.
and Chair Taylor, yes. Thank you, everybody. Okay, next we have the King Artist Residency.
Wonderful. So very exciting news. It's been another long road to get us here. Public art projects take a while to come to fruition, and we're very excited to update you on where we are with the selection panel's recommendation for our first King Artist Residency. So here's a bit of the history. So this road started almost exactly a year ago, where council asked the commission to consider the development of public art on King Plaza, reflecting the city's commitment to equity. After a series of meetings, both joint meetings with the HRC and meetings with the Public Art Commission, this really evolved into creating a permanent platform for ongoing discussion about equity and belonging in Palo Alto. And thus the idea of the King Residency was born. So here you can see the call for artists went live last summer. We discussed it in some depth at our annual retreat in August. At the end of August, we had our first selection panel in which 3 finalists were selected. And in October, we had our second selection panel. And so the 3 artists were asked to create public presentations, which were available on Zoom, to discuss their previous artwork, their previous public engagement, some about what their proposal would be for Palo Alto, including nonprofit partners, their target audience, and what kind of creative community engagement they might undertake. And finally, to touch on if they had a sense of what how that final artwork might manifest on King Plaza, they were able to share that, with the caveat that the idea for that final project may very well change over the course of their residency. So at the end of this, artist Reyes Magos from San Jose was selected to be the first artist in residence. And so here you get a sense of him, a little bit of his personality. So I'm just going to share a few of his slides of some of his previous work and a little bit about his proposal for Palo Alto, which I hope you had a chance to either tune in and see the presentations and or read his proposal in the packet. So these are some examples of some of his previous community engagement. Let's keep going. He was recently featured in Content Magazine. You can see the diversity of some of his projects. This is a community altar that he put together at a time during COVID when it had to be drive-by ready, so pushing his scale a little bit. He's also done some mural projects around the Bay Area. And here's probably what his line of cuts, probably what many of you might recognize if you've seen his work before. Here you go, some more examples. And so he also has done a number of these collage and portrait projects. And this is a project that he just completed after a residency in Mexico City, collecting photographs and stories of the local community, and then creating works of art sort of based on their interaction and their story. And it culminated in an exhibition. And so here's some of what he highlighted for his residency here, is really focusing on mental health in particular in the Latinx community, but broader than that. So opening the door for anyone to join into that conversation. Thinking about using potentially a mobile photo booth and storytelling documentation to gather information that could be posted in different places around the city. So not just asking people to come to City Hall in particular, or come to his studio at Coverly, but to have it maybe at a library or someplace in Midtown, or someplace kind of unexpected where people might come across it. I also want to reiterate that he does come from a mental health background. He did also mention that he's a yoga teacher, so it could be an interesting series of interactions. We're excited to see what he does. And so here's some of the goals, talking about how his approach and his questions were forming about belonging and being connected in Palo Alto. And I think the panel was really moved by the thoughtfulness of his approach and the openness of that. Slide. Really thinking about who some of the essential workers are that, run all these restaurants, cafes, bars. He's connected with a number of the mental health organizations within Palo Alto as well. Go ahead. And so here are some of the organizations that he called out in his proposal as potential partners. And so here you get an image with the caveat, it probably won't look exactly like that, but some sort of photo booth creating a safe space for storytelling. And that they could use filters to alter their appearance or keep some anonymity, which seemed to be important to a number of the panelists as well. Participants would be gifted a set of their photos, and again, it would be moved around to various public spaces. And so he had talked about creating temporary murals and or VR artwork. So again, this is sort of, we'll have to see how it manifests once he gets into the studio and begins his residency. But as the final artwork, he spoke about potentially having a banner that would be a larger collage, or it could be something sculptural. So he really doesn't have a specific vision in mind, but we'll have to see how the interaction goes. So his final goal, to create a piece that speaks to the diversity, equity, and inclusion that exists in Palo Alto. So again, he didn't have an emphasis that he definitely wanted to go one way or the other. He really wanted to wait and see where the process was going to lead him. So the recommendation this evening is to approve Reyes Magos as the first King artist for the first King Artist Residency. Are there any questions? Commissioner Walcott.
I listened into the presentation of all the artists, and I thought they were all really interesting. I thought he said, and maybe I'm wrong, did he say that when people tell their stories, they're going to tell their stories in a photo booth, so it's going to capture audio, right? Is that true?
I think there was some of both, where he might be there to interact with people because he understands people are going to maybe hesitant to just sit down and tell their story. So I think we're going to have to feel our way through how that's going to work best.
And maybe he touched on this again, but you guys know, is everybody familiar with StoryCorps? The same type of thing? So I'm just wondering if he could utilize that technology, right?
That's something we can certainly recommend to him.
Right. So actually my question was, if audio was going to be incorporated into his final thing. I think he touched on that, but again, like you said, it's still to be determined.
Right. It's a conceptual proposal, so we didn't estimate that they would have everything hammered out.
Right. Okay.
Just one suggestion as the lawyer. Yeah, I don't know if we want to engage the staff attorneys to make sure that proper consent and release is provided.
Right. Thank you.
I, like Lisa, did listen into the presentations by the three artists. I was really struck by how each artist made their presentation, and two of the three were more youth focused, which I thought was good, especially with this type of race and equity thing that we're trying to do, because it's not so much us old people, it's more the younger people that have to get into this, and that's where this is all going to come from. And I like his approach with mental health as well. I think that's such an important part. And as we've seen over the pandemic, how mental health really needs to be addressed. And we see that in our veterans as well, that come back from war. So I think that's an important part. And I like his thing of not really having a final project, but a piece that's in progress as he's going. And then as he gathers all this information, then he's going to come up with something final instead of having something final and then 18 months later saying, well, you know, that's maybe not it, and then trying to change the scope completely. So I like that as he goes, that he's really going to work on this final, whatever it's going to be, project that he has.
Thank you. I'm gonna, first of all, thank you everyone for your thoughtful comments. And I'll just chime in for a minute and say that we had a very strong, diverse group of candidates, and you never know what you're gonna get, as we all know, when it comes to these types of calls. And I will say it's a new venture that we're on, and an adventure, I should say. And I'm excited to see what artists can bring to the table in terms of community conversation. And we're very fortunate that all of the candidates that we interviewed, the final candidates that we interviewed, did have a background in community engagement in some form, and they had very strong artistic abilities. And so I think that's exciting to be able to see this connection between art and community building. And so, like Ben said, we don't know where it's going to take us, but I think we're all open to the next steps. And I'm really excited. And I'm excited to see where this journey will take us in the community too. I think it's always nice to have somebody come in and talk to people and engage with people and engage with the community. And I'm hoping that it will be a very strong, positive outcome. So with that being said, I would like to see if we can recommend, right, that Reyes Magos for the King Artist Residency.
So moved.
Wonderful. And can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. And roll call. We're all in favor, and then roll call. Okay. Commissioner Miyagi.
Yes.
Great. And Commissioner Waltuck.
Yes.
Commissioner Shen.
Yes.
And Chair Taylor, yes. Okay, thank you, everyone. Last, but certainly not least, on our action items is our DeAccession of artwork. And do we have any oral communications, Nadia?
We do, but generally oral communications take place after the presentation.
Thank you. Yes. Okay, so for those of you who are on the call with oral communications, we're going to wait until after, and then we'll give you some time to comment. Thank you.
Great. So we have a brief presentation for you all this evening. I hope you did get the updated pack of letters that were sent this afternoon, emails from community members regarding the Midtown Wall. I do want to just briefly clarify, because there seemed to be some confusion in the letters. The Elizabeth Lotta mural is not under discussion tonight. We're only discussing the poetry wall. And also that DeAccession does not mean immediate removal. So I'm looking forward to hearing more of the discussion and the feedback from the commission as we move forward. So next slide. So Nadia, do you want to walk us through some of the history of the Midtown mural?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. So this mural was a truly community project. It was idealized in 2003 when a Midtown art committee was formed out of Public Art Commission members and also representatives of the Midtown residents associations and a local poet, Elizabeth Biller Chapman. A call for community members was published in the local press to submit short poems, 30 words or less, or celebrating Palo Alto concepts of a neighborhood, community, and celebrating Midtown neighborhood in Palo Alto. Out of over 100 community submissions, 6 finalists were selected, including Ron LeBlanc, Elizabeth Midman, Amelia Saliba Long, Janice Dabney, Liz Cowie, and Sharon Olson. The finalists were people of very different ages. There were, Ron LeBlanc was one of the adult, finalists. There were Palo Alto elementary and middle school students who are also among the finalists. the project was funded in partnership with Village Properties, who made a donation, donated a contribution, and also project was funded by the public funds. So the mural was painted later in 2003. It was designed in-house by then public art commissioners, and the mural was painted on the wall by a contractor. Interestingly, originally the project was designed or thought out as a temporary project, and the murals by 5 finalists were to be fabricated in a vinyl material, and then after 6 months replaced by a permanent mural celebrating the poem, featuring the poem by Ron LeBlanc. However, back in early 2000, a vinyl production was a very expensive process. And so the plans were changed. The commissioners decided to instead feature all 6 murals, and instead of vinyl or similar media, just directly paint the mural on the south-facing wall of Walgreens. So right after, so the mural was painted, and then by 2010, it was noted that it was rather faded and looked deteriorated. So in 2012, the same painting company was hired to completely repaint the mural using existing stencils and design guidelines for the original mural. It was painted in latex paint, which is an unusual choice for outdoor projects of that sort. Back in 2016, when signs of fading, discoloration, and deterioration were evident again, we invited ARG conservators to examine this and other 13 other murals in the city's permanent collection of public art. So the condition report and recommendations are enclosed with the staff report to this item. And more recently, in last summer, again, we were approached by community members, concerned about the physical condition of the mural. So we approached Preservation Arts and other well-established art conservators in the Bay Area, who provided their condition report and also a maintenance, not maintenance, but a conservation treatment proposal with estimated costs that are also included as part of this staff report. So the major concerns outlined by the conservators in the most recent report, and they also echoed the recommendations and findings of the ARG consultants in 2016. So there are 2 major issues that they were observed, that the mural was found, there was overall discoloration from constant exposure to the sun. It's a south-facing wall of the building, so the sun is brutal on that wall. Also, constant heating and cooling from direct sunlight, temperature, just differences between night and day. And the clear UV coating that was applied by the painters in 2012, it has a pretty limited lifespan. So when that UV coating starts failing, you see those areas of blanched, discolored white pools. Extensive areas of the paint loss and bubbling also water staining in streaks were found throughout the murals, which were attributed by the consultants, by the art, pardon me, by the consultants due to issues with internal water damage.
And we've reached
So-
out to the property managers too, because they had mentioned that they were having some roofers out and they were going to have someone look more deeply into the wall. So we do not have a finite answer as to if from the inside they've discovered water damage. But from the conservator's report that we have here, it does appear that there is water seeping through at certain points in that wall.
Yes, and the murals further away from Middlefield Road, right? They're affected to a larger degree by water damage. So the part of the mural that is closer to Middlefield Road is overall in good condition. It's really just the opposite end of that wall, and we'll show you the image. Yes, it's just you see that dark red mural, so that part of the mural is has just more pronounced water damage.
So as you look at the mural from left to right,
Excuse me.
And looking at the report, the mural to the left closest to Middlefield Road, which is Ron LeBlanc's, which was the first place winner, his appears to be in the best shape, and then they tend to deteriorate as you get further down the wall. And the red one at the end, red is typically a challenging color in high sunlight, but just as an overall look, it appears to be that the murals deteriorate more as you go toward the back of the building. So the meeting this evening, we want to just come back to the commission to ask whether or not you want to begin the DeAccession process, which would be a 3-month process in which we would reach out to the artists, the stakeholders, and do public noticing before the commission would ultimately make a decision on this in February. So with that, I think we can turn it over for any members of the public who wish to speak. And then staff can field any questions.
So I see a raised hand from Annette Glennkov. I believe she was first to raise her hand. So Annette, I'm gonna promote you to. Okay. Annette, you have 3 minutes, please, to address the commission. And let me just start the timer for your convenience. Annette, please unmute yourself and you may address the commission. Thank you.
Sorry. Okay. You make it sound really bad, but over the years, the Midtown Residents Association is the only neighborhood that's requested public art. We successfully work with the city to implement the poetry wall, Liz Lotta's mural, the Bears at Hoover Park, as well as bringing fillery to Greer Park, plus the art on the railings at Matadero Creek. Now, the Midtown Residents Association requests that the city and the Art Commission do not decommission the art, but work with Walgreens to repair the water damage on the poetry wall on the right-hand side and repaint the wall with a paint that is more stable. Perhaps an awning is needed. The cost is minimal compared to the other projects that were discussed tonight. This unique piece of art is much beloved by the community, as witnessed by the multitude of letters you've received from the artists, which you say you're going to interact with, the original committee, which I was a part of, and the selected and the residents. Do not let this Midtown icon that represents our history be lost. As one resident states, more public art is good, and a blank wall instead will make this just a strip mall. Would any other new artwork on the project on the wall cost less than
Annette, we lost your sound.
I'm gonna stop Annette's video, and this may help the quality of this connection. It looks like we may have lost Annette.
Okay, well, perhaps we can save the rest of her time if she returns.
Yeah, she's no longer on the list of attendees.
Okay, let's go to the next speaker and see if she comes back.
Andrea Aliba, I can see your raised hand. Please unmute yourself and you may address the commission now. You have 3 minutes.
Yes, hello. Thank you. Thank you so much for addressing this issue. And I have been a resident of Palo Alto for 31 years. And this Midtown Poetry Wall is something very deeply near and dear to my heart. And I would feel extremely, extremely sad if it was destroyed or removed. I did send a letter to the Palo Alto Public Art Commission on I believe it was October 1st or a few weeks ago, and I did not get a response. But I do think that it is important, you know, many of you are a lot younger than the average age of the Palo Alto community. There's a lot of people that are a lot older. So I would ask you all to be a little bit mindful of our community, people that are a little bit older. I do believe that this poetry wall represents an important part of our history here in Palo Alto. It is it kind of represents a time in Palo Alto when life was a little more innocent. I did read all of the proposals, and I don't think that the poetry wall is in that bad of a shape. I did take a photo, which I'm happy to share with you recently. It really doesn't look that bad to me at all. I think that a little bit of weathering adds to the patina. But I would also say that, you know, I don't think it would have to cost an exorbitant amount to just repaint it every, you know, 10 years or so or something, whatever that is. So I think there may be more cost-effective ways to repair the wall or to update it without having to destroy it and take it down. Again, I have been a member of the community for 31 years, and I know most of the poets on this wall, including my daughter, who was only 7 years old when she wrote that poem. It came right out of her, and it's very dear to my heart. And I would be crushed if it was taken down, and I would be happy to donate to help preserve this as well. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much. We have one more community member in the attendance. It's SLO Poet. I'm going to promote you to the panelist and start the clock. Thank you so much for attending the meeting.
Now you can hear me. Is that right? Okay. You don't see me though. Well,
We can hear you. Continue.
I'm still a poet. I'm Sharon Olson, one of the poets. And I'm speaking to you from Annapolis, Maryland, where I live now. But I was a reference librarian in Palo Alto for almost 30 years. And every time I go back to Palo Alto, I obviously drive by Middlefield Road, and it makes me smile to see those poems up there. And I guess I would just ask you to think about public art. I'd love to see all the projects that you guys are having, that you're planning. But I would also ask you to think about public art as a representing a period in time, just as I hope the medical murals are still there from the Palo Alto Medical Clinic. And I'm sure you still have the Greg Brown paintings, different places in Palo Alto. I think this is sort of a little bit different, but in that category, it represents a time period. And so I'm not going to focus so much on me being one of the poets and whether I'd be sad or not that the wall would come down, but I also think it's very brightly and sprightly painted, and I like whoever did it. That's probably all I need to say.
Thank you so much. And we have no other raised hands. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If Annette comes back, we'll just let her, okay. So any questions, thoughts, comments? I guess I'll start. First of all, thank you for everyone who spoke up tonight and also who wrote us emails. We do hear you and we are listening. I am a Palo Alto born and raised young woman, getting there now, a little older probably. And I will say that community, I agree, is very important, and community voices are also very important. And so I think everybody who is committed and cares about keeping Palo Alto voices and making them heard through art. And poetry is also a form of art that we don't always get to see or hear experience, but it's important. And so I am very committed to making sure that the arts in all its forms is available and presented and made to the public. I do have a few questions that I'm hoping the staff can share in terms of, there's a lot of questions about money and upkeep, and I was hoping that you could just give everybody a little bit of a quick background in terms of what it takes to maintain these types of murals. Murals are a question and discussion point for a lot of public art commissions out there. I know for us, we've been talking about it a lot in terms of murals and what they mean. And I was hoping that Elisa, Nada, you could talk a little about the process, what it costs, and to the time frame. And if we were to keep this mural, how many years will we need to maintain it, and what will it look like? And then also if we could address the wall itself and the building itself and the city's relationship with the building, because it is not city property, the building, and so how that affects the long-term maintenance of the mural.
So those are all great questions. The property manager has said they will look into the water issues with the building and would be committed to correcting any of that. Over the course of the project, so since 2003, it's been just under $20,000 for the project, including the repaints by the same company, about $10,000 every 10 years. So you're looking at about $1,000 a year to keep it at status quo. There are some challenges, as you can see from the condition report, with the paint and everything that's underlying. So If it was to be repainted, it would probably need to be completely stripped. I don't know if Nadia had this in-depth conversation with the conservators on it, but it would have to be a complete redo. And probably consider using a different type of paint. That's not going to solve the southern exposure direct sunlight challenge. Nadia, do you have additional information you want to jump in?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct in saying that, you know, the conservators, when I spoke to them on site this summer, in order to, you know, stabilize the wall, you know, the 2 layers of existing mural would need to be stripped away. So there is no, you know, future bubbling from latex paint, you know, which is, you know, remaining underneath say any future mural. It would just, you know, repeat and cause the same issues. So the wall would need to be addressed, you know, absolutely stripped, reprimed, and essentially prepared for, you know, the application of the mural in the future. It will fade over time, given the existing, you know, color palette of the mural, and you know, just simply being facing the south in the sun. Yeah.
I have a question and kind of maybe an idea. I also am a Palo Alto resident, born and raised, had been away for a while and back now. And I do appreciate the idea of maintaining, you know, history, and it's of a certain time and everything that the residents have shared. But I'm wondering if, since maintaining it would be stripping it and then repainting, it might be, if amenable to the residents who spoke in favor of maintaining it, it might be a fun project to reimagine it. So it wouldn't be an exact duplicate, but it would be maintain the words, maintain the poetry, and you know, do something different to it. For instance, we talked about if the wall was seriously problematic, maybe we could do some sort of application on metal panels or some other material that we put on the wall. And again, we'd have to cost that out. Or maybe it was colors or patterns that would be, that would weather better and less intensely. So you wouldn't see it as disrepair, but it would just work with the sun exposure and whatever. So maybe it's lighter colors and darker text or something. But I'm just wondering if it would be possible to maintain the spirit and the words of the bill and just change the application and materials as a potential solution.
Those are all good points. You know, and again, there are lots of directions the commission might decide to go. So it may be that we DeAccession the artwork as a permanent artwork, but continue its life in some sort of different format. That could be one potential way to go. You know, we're open to any of the suggestions you all may have. Clearly the wall is problematic for various reasons. So the suggestion Commissioner Waltuck has of like reimagining it, perhaps it's smaller panels that work around problematic parts of the wall, if it's going to take time for them to address that. You know, perhaps it's done on the aluminum backing or some other material that could be more easily taken down and reapplied every few years at a smaller cost with smaller panels. So those are all things that that staff is open to.
Elise, I just have one other question related to that. So if we reimagined it, would it still have to go through the formal DeAccession process and then be presented as with a new budget and the new process to do it in a different way? Or we couldn't just look at this as a repair to an existing thing that did not include DeAccessioning it and reproposing it?
It's a great question. Generally, this is a highly unusual project because there is not an artist tied to the design of the project. So this would be a first for us. Generally, no, you cannot change anything in the collection without, going through a more formal process. So I think some of that would depend on, do the poets all sign off on it? Are we commissioning an artist to redesign? Like, there are a lot of variables there that we would have to work out. And the other question is, the murals in the collection, if we're taking the steps to do this, does it make sense to keep them in the collection? Or does it make sense to have them out of the official collection, but continue their lifespan as a long-term temporary project?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Is vinyl a viable alternate to just painting on the wall? Vinyl is a lot cheaper than it was 20 years ago, so.
So we would have to look into the specifics of that versus the aluminum. What would be most cost effective? I know the aluminum generally is good for 2 years, and then we may see some fading. The ones we have up for our temporary murals have performed extremely well, but they haven't been up that long as of yet. They do have UV coating, but they're not all like southern exposure. That wall really gets a lot of exposure. So there's some variables there.
Yeah, I know.
also think, sorry, I also think that the condition of the wall still affects that. So if the water, that would affect anything that goes on it unless it's set off of it. So
Right.
So even if we do vinyl, I think you still have to address the condition of the wall.
Right. Or each of the projects or the poems get smaller, we have to work around the problematic sections of the wall.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the biggest, I think the biggest problem is the south facing. As a meteorologist, I understand about south facing and the wind hitting it. And this last rainstorm, this big rainstorm we had, probably didn't do any good to that wall. So, and the water thing, I know we ran into the same thing in the University Avenue tunnel about trying to do stuff there. And so I think that's a major factor in what we have to consider in doing this.
I just have a question. Do we anticipate that there will be any new developments or constructions on the other side of the wall? Because I noticed that the current plaza is like 1 story, and I just wonder if there's any anticipated redevelopments that may be multiple stories, which would, in theory, change the sun exposure.
Not that we're aware of, no. But great idea.
Sonia, you do bring up a point that I think a lot about, and that is that we're very lucky that we have a developer who owns, or a building owner who likes the mural and wants to keep it in some form. I also, I'm not talking on behalf of the commission myself, but I also would like to keep the mural in some form. But I will also say that you never know who's going to come along and potentially sell and or buy the building. So I think of this as kind of a long-term vision, and that it would be also terrible for something to happen where the new owner or the current owner decides, look, we want to redo the whole building or something, or we want to do whatever maintenance, or we're going to sell the building and it no longer is going to be of use. So I think that's something that I'm thinking a lot about, and that is real life. And so it would be very sad to just see that piece just disappear, because I don't think there is a formal DeAccession policy, because the owners of the building own the building. They were just nice enough to lend space to the piece, correct? Okay. And then I also will add too that I think this is an opportunity to really rethink murals and what they look like and how they are displayed. I know we've had a long conversation about it. We'll continue to have a long conversation. But I also think of this as an opportunity maybe to do more communal public art projects, and thinking about how we can make sure other voices are also heard. And this could be a long-term project, but I also think that's important for people to understand that not everybody is going to have the opportunity to have their poetry on a building. And so to think about that and what that means for the future of the community. And so how to address history, but also how to address moving forward. And so I'm excited about where this conversation is going to keep moving. And I'll stop there. Any other questions, comments, thoughts?
Well, this is, I think, a unique piece, that it's a piece of public art that's on a private building. And I don't think we have, I mean, we have the Greg Browns, but overall, I think this is just a unique thing. And that we have a building owner that likes public art and can have that on his building, but yet that piece is in the city's collection. So I think this is kind of it's a unique situation. And how do you work with the building owner and the community to work this thing? And we know what the problems are. And I think it might just come down to what is the cost of doing something like this, and do we actually have the funds to do something that's ongoing like this?
And Elise, could you also just address Greg Brown? I know that the commission, we've talked about Greg Brown's work, but in terms of whether it's part of our collection, not just so the public can hear a little bit about our experience working with Greg Brown's pieces as well.
Sure. I just want to be careful we're not straying too far from the agenda item at hand.
Correct. How it relates to the agenda item.
But those pieces are on private property. They're not officially part of the collection. We do have some other pieces that are on private property that are part of the collection. For instance, the triptych of murals on Cal Ave, adjacent in what was the Bishop building, adjacent to the Starbucks. So we do have some of both. It is definitely a challenge if a property changes hands and we don't have control necessarily over what becomes of the artwork. So it is an interesting legal challenge, which is why murals are tricky.
Thank you for clarifying. Any other questions, thoughts?
Just to make sure I have the full picture. So my understanding is that this particular property owner is supportive of public art, and they may be inclined to invest in the infrastructure to avoid the I think the foundational issues related to the wall. My question is, would they be inclined to, in addition to fixing the foundational wall issues, to perhaps refresh the mural? So because it sounds like this is a $10,000 repair maintenance cost over 10 years, and I'm just wondering if this is not a cost that the property owner will be interested in making an investment in, because this art work belongs to their wall.
I think that's a great question. And we can certainly approach them about that. I guess the question is, if we were to repaint it, are we committing to, okay, every 10 years, the city will put forth approximately $5,000 and the property owner will, to continue to build on that existing process? Or are we going to invest in completely stripping the entire wall to redo it? So there's a lot of variables there. The property owner did share, or the property manager did share, that they are open to the refurbishment of the Midtown mural wall or the commission of something new. They really appreciate having public art there, and we can certainly approach them about potential partial funding for a new project or refurbishment of this.
The question I have then is, we either deaccession the piece or we go in the other direction and refurbish it. Is that the options that we have, or is there another option along the way? Or is it deaccession or refurbish?
Well, I think there are a number of different directions that have been discussed even a little bit tonight. So there could be DeAccession and commission a new mural, something different involving the Midtown community, something new. And we would have to, you know, work with the property owners. We go through the DeAccession process to address the water in the wall, strip the wall, you know, make sure that the proper paint is used, etc. So that's one option. Another option would be to have the contractor who has painted the wall now twice, to come out and do that again, which would be approximately $10,000. And we know it'll probably need to be redone in about another 10 years. Another step would be to potentially deaccession the artworks from our collection, but then have it live on or expand in some aspect. So perhaps it becomes a larger poetry wall done on aluminum backing, and it become, you know, we can potentially work around some of the challenges with the wall with a long-term temporary platform for community poetry. So there are many different iterations and directions the commission might choose to take at this point.
You know, I don't know if we've had just sort of a very frank conversation, but just sort of kind of thinking about it as a property owner. You know, the way I would have this conversation is to kind of go to them and say, what's your holding plan for this property? Right, Walgreens, how long are you going to be there? Or, you know, like whomever the property owner is. And maybe say, you know, obviously the sunk cost is to repair the wall. And then that's the baseline cost. On top of it, it could be maintaining the current or refurbishing the current mural, you know, picking some paints that are more weather resistant, picking a shade of red that is a little less, you know, damageable by the sun. So that's plan A, right? So whatever the sunk cost is for the foundation of the wall, plus repair for the current mural, plan A. Plan B, have a completely new mural, and what's the cost associated with that, right? And if they look at plan A and say the city is willing to kick in X amount, which is earmarked generally for repair, I imagine we can get to plan A at a fairly cost-effective way. Because plan B, you have to scope out the time duration associated with it, the administrative costs associated with decommissioning something, right? So I think you factor all of that in and you say, plan A, plan B, you're the property owner, give us some directions. I think that could move the conversation.
I would say too, Cynthia, you make some good points. And what I would like to know is exactly what the exact status of the wall is, and also what their plans are for the wall. Because even if we did a completely new mural, if they don't fix the wall, it's going to be the same issue, the same problem. So I definitely think I would like to go back and find out what the timeline is of production or fixing, not production, of fixing the wall, if that's something that they do want to definitely continue. And then I think we can go back to the drawing board and then say, well, okay, so if they're going to fix the wall, then these are our options. Because I don't want to make a decision without knowing the canvas, so to speak, that we're using. And then I also just want to think too about this idea of that there always are going to be painters and conservators. But is that going to be something in the long term there's going to be a lot of, and good ones? And so vinyl now is a kind of, I don't want it to say that's taking away from the painted artist, or the hand, because there are many out there, but you know, to think about that too.
Can I ask you a question about is it like for the damage of the wall, do we have any idea what it is? For instance, could it just be a matter of a drain and fixing a drain, or is it really inside the wall, like real structural problem? And is that problem for the building owner like internal to the building too, or is it just the wall that doesn't really affect them? And are they going to be motivated, aside from preserving the artwork, to make this repair?
I think those are all good questions. They said they're committed to fixing the wall, but since they haven't done a deep dive yet on what the exact, how deep the problem may or may not be, it's, that's hard for me to say.
Okay. So, but it could be like a minor fix, which, could be maybe easy.
That would be great.
Yeah, if I may also clarify, the information about this condition status of the wall, everything we have is in the conservator's report. The conservators, when they evaluated the murals on site, were only able to view the site just by standing in front of the mural. They were not able to say, like, enter the building, or just did a more close-up evaluation of the roof. The evaluation of the site happened by the condition report consultants, just by standing in front of the wall. So it's just external evaluation only.
Right, superficial evaluation.
Yes. So we have all of the information about this condition just in the reports.
Thank you.
And it looks like Annette is back. So can we give her the floor for, I think she has a half a minute left, last when I checked.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. How frustrating. So I think I was talking about community involvement, and you talked about engagement, and certainly the letters that you've gotten really talks about how the community feels and the artists. And so I hope you don't ignore the residents. Just listening to some of your comments, the Walgreens is not going to go away, and we'll take 10 years, but we urge you to restore the poetry wall. And we also want to get more art in Midtown. That's another topic, but we certainly have been talking to Elise about the Wells Fargo wall, or next to the Midtown Shoe Repair would be an excellent location, maybe in partnership with Rotary. So again, any new artwork on the building would make it, you'd have to go through the same problems as you have with the water damage. So we ask you to figure out what's actually going on, restore the paintings with a new type of paint that's more stable, and listen to the Midtown residents and artists' voice to keep this cherished work of art. Sorry, I'm a little incoherent at the end. Just having my video disappear was very, very frustrating. So look forward to additional conversation. Thank you. I don't know if you heard all of that.
We did. Thank you, Annette. Any other thoughts? Like everybody's saying, this is a very unique discussion, and I think there are many routes that we can take. And so should we do a vote? Are we ready? So, okay.
We need a motion first.
Yes. Okay. So the motion is to request that the Public Art Commission make a decision whether or not to initiate the DeAccession evaluation process for the Poetry Wall mural located in Midtown Palo Alto.
So moved.
Well, I don't
Yeah.
understand the motion.
So, okay, so that's, I wanted to, so my motion actually was to, or Ben, do you want to make a motion, or it's a little, this is a little different, the agenda than other times, but do you want to make a
I'll make
specific
the
motion?
motion. I'll make the motion that we start the DeAccession process of this piece of art.
And I actually, Ben, I wanted to add, if on my end, I would like to start the DeAccession process, but I would like to before find out more about the wall.
That would be a
Which I know
friendly.
which is a conflict of what you're saying. So
Okay,
I don't
well,
know
then
if there's a way we can combine.
I withdraw my motion, and I make the motion that we table this item until we get a little further information about the condition of the wall before we move forward.
Yeah, I will supplement what Ben's motion, which is I think we need to find out from the property owner the amount of investment they're willing to commit to repair the wall, which sounds like they're willing to do. Understand the depth of that investment and understand any additional costs they're willing to invest in maybe refurbishing the mural. So what is the overall cost to to the city of Palo Alto in terms of what we need to put in to maintain?
I also think that I'm just wondering if we can kind of tie two things together in the motion eventually. I understand we want to get more information, but for instance, would we say we want to vote to DeAccession and reimagine the wall, meaning that we would maintain the poetry, but it would maybe manifest in a different way? So would those be tied in one decision by the commission?
That is one way to do it. As I mentioned at the beginning of this evening, this is kicking off the DeAccession process, in which during that time, there is more in-depth communication with the artists and with the stakeholders. Additional information can be brought back to the commission, in which case a final action wouldn't take place until February. But you could certainly have a motion that says something to the effect of starting the DeAccession process with the understanding that the poetry wall will be reimagined, whatever language you wish to put in there, to make it clear that the intent is not to have it just disappear.
Okay, and so for the purposes of tonight, are we following what Ben just said, that we're gonna and Zinnia, that we're going to wait until we find out more information about the wall? We're going to check with the property owner about their funding and how they want to approach it. So we're tabling this discussion until we have more information, and then we'll bring it back with a revised motion that could include both DeAccessioning and reimagining.
That sounds like the direction we are moving. Yes.
Okay.
That was the direction. So Ben, do we need to revisit the motion again, Elise? Or okay, Ben, since you said it so nicely, do you mind repeating the motion?
I move that we table the DeAccession discussion until more information is gathered about the condition of the wall and any input from the building owner.
Do I have a second? I'll second. And roll call. Commissioner Miyagi.
Yes.
Commissioner Shen.
Yes.
And Commissioner Walczak.
Yes.
And Chair Taylor, yes. Okay, thank you. And thank you, staff, for all the work you've been doing to research. We appreciate it. Okay, next we have our non-action item of code art.
So we have a little bit of eye candy to share with you here. code art. Here are some of the statistics we were able to gather from it. We had some great community partners. The feedback was tremendously positive. 100% surveyed wanted to see another event like code art. 96% gave code art a 4 or 5 out of 5, 5 being the best. I think we only had 2 people that gave us a 3 and nothing below a 3. 2/3 of those surveyed came downtown specifically for code art, and 2/3 of those surveyed visited a business, a shop or a restaurant while they were here. So we really, we were a little limited on the metrics that we could gather. We surveyed 134 people, but here you can see some of the tremendous feedback that we got. I think the community was really eager to get back together and have a shared experience and animate downtown in a different way and get to meet the artists. We kept hearing over and over from people how much they really enjoyed meeting the artists. And it was tremendously fun watching people try and figure out the artworks, especially Marpy's piece here, and learning how to create and release their own creatures into the artwork. We had ballet dancers, we had people in wheelchairs spinning, we had like all kinds of great interactions. Here you have Liz Hickok with a bunch of community members. Of course, her piece, it was a little difficult to see before 7 p.m. that she had this sculpture there, and it was amazing how many children gravitated immediately to the sculpture. We're so interested to find out how that was made, like here. But I think I saw you all there at some point. This project was kind of one of the surprise hits that it always had a huge crowd around it, people trying to figure out how the artwork worked. And people really were working together on both sides of the wall to see if they could make a message appear. It was really fun to watch. And this piece on City Hall, it was on City Hall Plaza, was actually, it worked much better than we even anticipated there, because it's slightly quieter there, and a lot of the nuances of the sound probably would not have read to visitors in a busier environment. So it was a great flow of people throughout the night. We had amazing volunteers. The artists really worked so hard and were wonderful and engaging with the public. And it was really fun to see so many people come out and visit us. And there, of course, is Corey Barr's piece. Oh, and this was another surprise, was Bell's Alley was just packed. You know, the artist thought, oh, well, community members probably won't have the patience to want to decode it. Maybe they'll get a word or two in. No. People were committed. People came back the next day with their card because they had to go to dinner to come figure out the rest of the message. I mean, it was really, it was wonderful. It was, it worked out really well. And we were able to gather some great feedback from our volunteers, from our artists, from the community, trying to figure out if we were to take this on again, what might Code Art 3 look like? So I'll open it up for comments. I know you all had your own experiences there, and lots of volunteer hours. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, thank you, Elise and Nadia, for all your hard work and the artist's hard work in this Code Art 2. I thought it was fantastic. Now, did you get any comments that it was better at night than during the day? I know the last time it was held was kind of warm, so that might have cut into it. But at night, I thought it was fantastic with the light and all that. I thought you could get more involved into it.
Mm-hmm.
I also brought some people and, you know, some kind of jaded New Yorkers, and they loved it. They were so like thrilled to have, you know, like very stimulating public art all over, walking distance Palo Alto. They were really enthusiastic. So that made me happy. And the quality of the art was just great. It was really high. And I agree, just having the artists be able to talk to you, just every single time I came over to any piece, they were ready to engage and they were talking to everybody. So that was great.
Yeah, thank you. Any other comments or observations from the commissioners?
I do have a comment. Next time we do it, I can't decide if it's better to do it while it's this time of the year or maybe while it's still a little bit warmer.
We got cold on the plaza a couple nights.
Yeah, and and the reason why I say that is because I just wonder, is it going to, would this bring out a crowd that otherwise would not be out because it's so cold? Or should we try to take benefits of, good long summer nights?
That's a good question. The first code art we did was in June, and it was a day into evening event. And it ended up being a much longer event. It was too long and hard for the artists, and it was really hot. And people wanted more of the interactive technology and the light. So we pivoted code art 2 to specifically be an evening event, but it's always tricky to try and find the right weekend because a week later it was raining. We just got so lucky, but it certainly, it certainly was unexpectedly cool those nights.
Yeah, one other question. When is Code Art 3?
Too soon. But when we did the first code art, we had talked about having it every 2 years. So potentially 2023, if we're looking at another fall event, we're looking at what potential grant options might be there and what kind of timeline we might put together. But I'm glad you're excited to sign up.
I want to make a plug for fall because the usual seasons are like a lot of the new museum shows or anything happens, it's the fall season. And that's kind of the indication like that we're jumping back into the year. And I kind of like that Palo Alto would fall in that cycle because then you can really get into a cycle groove that a lot of the new stuff happens then, and then you can fill in the rest of the year. But if we are gonna have more kind of participatory events, I think it's nice to follow the normal arts cycle, which that is.
That's an interesting point. It also makes it easier for people to anticipate if it's taking place in the same time frame.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also in agreement, I think that's a word, with that. And I also do agree with everybody else. I think it went superbly well. I think everybody was really happy, and thank you to staff and also to Amy Cohen. I think she deserves a big shout out, maybe a double big shout out. And she organized, I think, all of it pretty much with the help of staff, but a lot of the volunteer aspects of it. And so thank you, Amy, wherever you are.
And Denise as well.
Denise, wonderful, yes. So one of the things two things I wanted to share is number one, I think we got very lucky, and I don't remember the numbers because I'm terrible when it comes to like figuring out how many people actually attended a festival. It's hard, I think, in general. But the first one we did, I think it felt like there's a lot more people only because it was part of the daytime and people were out anyways. I think we got very lucky this year, although with the pandemic, I was glad there weren't as many packs of people together, that the streets were closed. So it's something to think about, in the future, because the streets were closed this year, there were people eating around and hanging around. And so in terms of my next comment was going to be, how to enhance attendance, because quite a few people kept saying to me, oh, I didn't hear about this at all. Like, wow, I'm so glad I found out about it. We just were walking down the street, which is always a challenge. I get that. But one thing I was thinking about is if there's a way that we could get a media sponsor. I know that the Walk and Run works with the Palo Alto Weekly. I don't know if that's something we can look into, or another media sponsor that can really just help promote the heck out of this wonderful program. So something to think about. And then also volunteers too. You know, how we can encourage people to volunteer and also to sign up for our email list so they learn more about public art opportunities. So those are my little 2 cents. Does the cat have anything to say about code art?
Just wanted to say hi.
Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts or? Okay. Well, I think we have our announcements. I'm looking here. Our public letters, but we looked at the public letters already. I think most of you, is there any comments that need to be made? Public letters, no, okay. And announcements.
Most of those were covered at the beginning, unless any of the commissioners have additional announcements.
Okay.
And then for your calendar, our regular scheduled meeting would be November 18th. I don't anticipate that there's going to be something urgent on the agenda for the 18th. So I would recommend that we look at holding the tentative December meeting. If commissioners are available, that would be December 16th as the next meeting. But we got through a lot of hefty agenda items this evening. So I would recommend that we not meet on the 18th and just keep our December 16th meeting should there be agenda items that need to be addressed at that time.
Great. Thank you. Our meeting is adjourned.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Have a
Have a
wonderful
good one.
day.